So let's take a look at MSTY, MR, and Bitcoin today. We're going to look at the charts, see what it's telling us, how far down could it be going, or are we coming to some type of support? Then we'll take a look at AMDY to see if it's still moving up, and then I want to show you a new spreadsheet that I am working on for utilizing my RSI 2 trading method. Hello my friends, this is Legend. So, MSTY has been moving up. It then started kind of trading sideways, and now it started coming down a little bit. And I wanted to take a look to see if there is any type of support, resistance, or anything like that that we could be looking at coming up in the next few days. So let's take a look at MR to better understand where MSTY could be headed. And here we are on MR. And as you can see, I do have a few lines in here drawn. I've got this line up here that we had drawn in for that resistance, and it did respect that resistance line, right? It went up, it tried its best to break it, but it got rejected and started coming back down. Now I do have this line right here at this 148.97, so you might as well say about 149, and I drew that line as it was a bit of a resistance line before it did break above it. So I'm hoping that this 149 for MR can be a strong support for us. But we all know MR is not moving on its own. It's really getting moved by Bitcoin. So let's take a look at Bitcoin and see if we can see some type of resistance or support line that we can use to hopefully push MR up, which will eventually push MSTY up as well. And here we are looking at Bitcoin. Now, I did have this line right here at this 74.5 right here. Now, before I had a line at the top of this wick right here, and I can redraw that line just to show you, roughly about right there, right? As it did somewhat try to break that, and I had that at roughly 76K. But as you can see, it is indeed below it. It hasn't closed below it, but it is currently below that 76. And that was what I was hoping to be a support. But I think this 74.5K could be a stronger support. The 74.5, I'm really hoping that this one holds because it is a pretty strong line. As you can see, just in this area right here where it was bouncing off of it, here, 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 and here, right? And when it was under this 74.5, it actually was coming up, breaking past it, but then getting rejected right back down to that line. And you can see that's pretty strong right through here. And if I even scroll on further back, you can see right here, it did somewhat try to get up close to it and got rejected, as this area is pretty strong from what I'm seeing. And even if we go back even further, and we'll go all the way back here, you can see back here at April 2025, which was about a year ago, this thing did come down and did test this 74.5, right? So I think that this 74.5 is a very strong support line for Bitcoin. We really need it to hold that, stay above the 74.5, and start moving on up. Because the next line that I've got drawn in is roughly about 71.5. But I believe this 74.5 to be a very strong support line for Bitcoin. And if it can stay above it or come down, test it, and then bounce right off of it, it could get up some good momentum and start moving this thing back up. But as you can see, that MACD, we are turning down on the MACD. We do have a little bit of a red momentum here, so this is pushing down. But I, again, am hoping that this 74.5 does hold, but it does not mean that it won't break past it, because it was under it just previously. But I'm just showing what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a pretty strong support line at this 74.5, and I'm hoping that Bitcoin can hold it, bounce off of it, because if it does, then Mr. will probably come down, test this 149 line and bounce off of it, which we know will also move MSTY, as it will probably come down and also test this 2250 line right here before bouncing off of it. And that is all if Bitcoin does bounce off of that 74.5. Now that's a big if, but that is what I am hoping for. Now let's take a look at AMDY. And here we are on AMDY. Now AMDY has just been a rocket ship. Look at this. This thing has been going up, 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 and up. It did come down a little bit on Monday and Tuesday, but today it did start moving back up. So I'm hoping to see this one continue on moving up, because that would be an awesome thing for AMDY. Love it, and I'm glad to see it. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So I'm going to show you my RSI 2 trading method spreadsheet. This sheet is not available because I am still working on it, even though it will never be perfect, but I'm still trying to figure out a few things on it. And here's that sheet that I was just telling you about. And this is the blank sheet, right? And what this is whenever that RSI 2, and we can take a look at that on the Webull chart. And here we are on the Webull chart, and I'm currently looking at SPY, okay? So what I mean by that RSI 2 dropping below 10, that's this down here, RSI 2, and that's a 2-day interval. That's what the 2 stands for. So when it drops below this 10 bar right here, then I am making a purchase. Okay, so in this case right here, you can see that it did drop down right here, and it dropped down below that 10 on 327 and also on 330. So that would have been 2 purchases right there. And then once it did move up, then I'm going to move to try to set a stop to protect my earnings if I can. And in this case, of course, with the way SPY has been moving over the last few weeks, it has just taken off. So I definitely was able to go ahead and set that stop to protect those profits. But just to show an example, I'm going to use this one right here, and then I'm going to also show you a little bit of a back test that I did from the beginning of the year up until this point right here. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to that sheet, show you how I'm entering this in and what it does tell me as far as in, do I set a stop or not, and so forth. But again, we will enter it in this date right here, this 327, as that was the first point that it did drop below RSI 2, and the amount for that dollar amount or that purchase amount that I'll be entering for this example will be the closing price, not the low, but the closing price, okay? And again, this is just for fun. It is not perfect, but it is something I'm just playing with. So we'll enter that 327 for a buy price of 634.09 into the sheet and see how the sheet works. All right, so here we are on that sheet. So the first thing I would enter in is my ticker symbol. And for this one, like I said, I'm using SPY. So when you enter it in, it does give you the name of the stock or ETF, and it gives you that current price. Now that price here is today's price or today's closing price in this case. But we're going to use that date of 327 as that first purchase, okay? Because we're just doing a little back testing. And like I said, I'll show you the back testing all the way back to the beginning of this year and to show you the wins and the losses of each of those positions. So this date here being that 327, that buy price, if you remember, it was 634.09. Now, how many shares do I want to purchase at this? Well, I've got a little calculator right up here. You enter in how much that you want to actually invest, and it'll tell you how many shares you can buy using this amount of money at that purchase price. And that purchase price is being pulled from that buy price that I just entered in right here. So in this case, it says 17 shares. I will enter in 15 shares, okay? Because if I have to buy more shares, say like another share, because if it does drop down, then I want to make sure I don't use up all of my money. So you may not even want a full 15 shares. You may only want 10 shares, but that's up to you. And this invested amount, it doesn't necessarily have to be the total amount or the max amount that you have to invest, because like I said, for this method, you do have to have a little bit in the kitty so that you can purchase on those dips when that opportunity comes your way. So for this case, like I said, we got 327, 634.09 is that buy price, and I'm buying 15 shares. Now the fees for me are all zero because it doesn't cost me anything to buy shares. So I'm just going to leave this fee column here blank because it's going to be zero anyway. So as you can see, once I hit enter, it does calculate how much that purchase amount is and my running total, as if that way, if I do buy more shares, it will increase. It also calculates what that MA5 is. Now that MA5 is the indicator that I use or will be using as my exit point. Okay, but I need the MA5 above my purchase price. So right now, the MA5 is 648.91 and my average is 634.09. Therefore, it's going to say, can I set that stop? And it's going to be no, because my average price is under the point that I would be using to set that stop. So for that one, it's just a no. So we move on to the next day. And the next day is on 3/30. Now for this one, we know we did have that buy, and let's check that out on the Webull chart. And here we are on the Webull chart, and you can see right here, that did drop below 10 on the RSI 2 on 3/30, and that closing price for that day is 631.97. So let's enter that in as that purchase price. So 631.97, how many shares I'm going to buy? Well, I usually do maybe about 10% of my original purchase, okay? And you do whatever you want, but I usually try around about 10%, give or take. So 10% of 15 would be 1.5, so I'm just going to round it right up to 2 shares. Now, can I set my stop? It still says no, I cannot set my stop, so I do nothing. So the next day, I enter in the date, and when I hit enter, it does tell me that I can set my stop. And it also tells me what I can set that stop to, because that is the MA5. So the MA5 has risen above my average. Let's take a look at the charts to verify that that MA5 is 643.66. All right, here we are back on the charts, and these are the 2 buy spots that we did do. And you can see the next day we had a pop-up, right? It actually closed at 650.34. But what is the MA5 right here? Well, that is this number right here. That's this green number. And when I hover right over that, you can see it is 643.66. So we have verified that it is indeed pulling the correct number and calculating that MA5 correctly. So what do I do on my sheet now that it says I can set my stop? Well, I come over here to my drop down, and this is my initial stop, okay? So the very first one's going to be my initial stop. So then all I do is click the initial. It sets that as my stop. I would use this number on my broker app to set that stop so that if it does drop below this point, the next day it will sell those shares. And in this case, it's going to sell them at 643.66, which is above my average already. And that's almost $10 above it. So that's a very nice stop to have right there. So the next day we enter in that date. And I enter in that 4-1, and it says, yes, I can set that stop. But do notice this. This MA5 is 643.35. That's actually less than where it was at before. Now, why is that? Well, let's take a look at the charts and explain. So here we are back on the charts, and this was that 643.66 that we did set. And then the next day is when we showed that it did drop. And let me zoom in a little bit in here so you can really see that curve. And this green line is that MA5, okay? And that is the line that I'm tracking. So right here, we had that set at 643.66, but as you can see the next day, it did come down. Well, why would it come down if the price of it went up? Well, that's because it is a curve, right? So even though this did increase, it is trying to turn around, right? But to make that turn, it did drop just a little bit. I do not necessarily want to drop my stop down, so therefore I will keep it right where it's at rather than move it, because moving it would drop it down just slightly, and I don't necessarily want to do that. So therefore, even though it does say, yes, I can set my stop, it doesn't mean that you want to, right? Because like I said, I do not want to go from 643.66 down to 643.35. Even though that's a very small amount, I don't want to do it. You can, but I don't want to. So in this case, I'm not going to say, yes, move my stop to this. I'm going to say, no, do not move it. Keep it that same amount as before. And we move on to the next day. So on April the 2nd, we look and it did increase. So I can indeed move that stop up. So I say yes. And it adjusts this stop here to the new MA5 location. And the next day was the 6th because we had the holiday and the market was closed. So we enter in 4.6 here, and when we hit enter, it populates everything right through here, and you can see that that did increase. So we're just going to hit yes, increase it. And you just keep on going, and you can see because SPY was just on fire, this one here is just going to be one of those crazy wins, right? It's just going to be a crazy win, but I wanted to show how this worked, but I will indeed go back and show you a few times where you didn't win as much and also where you took a loss at. So 4.8, yes, it did increase from 655 to 661. So I say, yes, I want to move it. On 4.9, it increased again. So I say, yes. And 4.10, it increased yet again, right? This thing just keeps moving up. And that candle did not get down to the point where it triggered my stop. Eventually it will, right? But until then, I'm going to keep riding this thing up. Next day is 4.13. It moved yet again. So yes. As you can see, all I'm doing is entering in the date and hitting enter, and it calculates it all out for me and tells me pretty much what to do, right? I do have to decide if I want to move that stop, but that's my choice. But outside of that, it is helping me to see quickly what to do. And in this case, since it moved from 676 to 683, yeah, I'm going to move that thing on up. 415, we're moving up again. 416, we moved up again. 417, we moved up again. And let me tell you, I really wish that I would actually have bought into this one, right? I mean, I'm only using a little less than $11,000, and that's trading SPY. On 420, we're moving it on up. It is now up to 702, and I'm going to scroll it on up. 421, look at this. On 421, whenever I entered that date, it tells me that the stop was hit, okay? And it was hit from this stop that we had, and that stop that I had was 702.98, and it did hit that stop. So let's take a look at the chart and let's show how it hit that stop, and that was on 421. All right, so here we are on the chart, and you can see right here, this is 416, 417, and right here on this green line, that's the MA5. As you can see, it is coming up, but here we are on 420, and that MA5 is 702.98, and that is the stop that we had set, and look what happened the next day. It was above it, right? And had it stayed above that 702.98, this would not have got stopped out. But as you can see on this candle, what was the low? Right here is that low. So whenever I hover over it, you can see that low was 702.64. I mean 702.64. And we had our stop at 702.98. So it just barely hit, but it did hit and it did stop me out. So it ran through and kicked me out at 702.98. And now you can see that the momentum is slowing down, right? It is slowing down because those candles are starting to cross that MA5. But now that I'm kicked out of it on this point, I would now be looking for my next entry. And that next entry would be when this RSI 2 here, this yellow line down at the bottom, drops below 10. And if it would drop below 10, then I could be looking at another buy point to hopefully have another win. So as you can see, that is why this did get stopped out, because that candle for that day, it did indeed drop below it. Now that MA5 actually went up, but it doesn't matter because I got stopped out at 702.98. So in this case, it did get stopped out. So this column here is, was it sold? Well, since it did get stopped out, then I come right here and I say, yes, it was sold. And how much did I earn off of this trade? If we scroll right up here, it calculates it all out for you. It shows you the total amount earned, $1,175.44. The amount or percentage that we did earn on that trade was 10.9%. If you calculated that out, it would be roughly about a 13% for the month. Now, my goal is roughly about 3% a month. So that one just knocked it out of the park, right? Now, that doesn't happen all the time. That move on SPY was quite an anomaly, but had I got in, that would have been a very nice win, right? I wish I would have had this sheet up and running before March the 27th. But now that we've shown a bit of the huge win here, let's take a look at what it looks like if we take it all the way back to the first of the year. And here we are looking at that first of the year, right? Now I've already entered it all in. I'm not going to go through each one, right? You can see that I did have a purchase on 12/31. And if we look at that chart, here we are on the chart, and you can see right here, that's 12/31. It did drop below 10. It's actually sitting at 5.86 on the RSI 2. So that right there is the reason that triggered that purchase. And as you can see, it's not doing any kind of crazy movements, but I was still able to come out with about $151, and that projected out for the month is almost 3.5%. Very nice, right? Now that was purchased on 12/31 and I got kicked out on 1/13, okay? And that hit my stop right here, which then means that anything after 1/13, I'm open for the next purchase. So back on the chart right here, here we are on 1/13 right there, and you can see we're waiting for this RSI 2 to drop below it, and it does on 120. So on 120, I make another purchase right here, and it does end up stopping me out just 3 days later, but that gains me $143, which gives me a calculated monthly of about 14%. Sweet, right? So let's see if there's another opportunity after 123. All right, right here is 123, so let's move it on. And this one here did not quite drop below 10, so we keep on waiting. And eventually on 2.5, we get our opportunity right here to make another purchase. So the new one will be on 2.5. So here we are, we made that purchase on 2.5 for $677.62, 15 shares. And it went for a few days before getting kicked out on 212. And that ended up making me $174, which did surpass my goal of 3% for that month because that projected calculated monthly percentage was 7.46. So far, so good, right? This thing is just winning, winning, winning. What could possibly go wrong, right? So that stop hit me at 212. So I move on to the next one. So I got kicked out on 212 on that one. And looking on the chart right here, you can see that I did get kicked out. But since it did drop below that 10 right here on 212, I'm going to show where I did purchase back in at that price. And here we are. We're looking at that 212 buy. I was in it for a few more days, got stopped out, but only made 38 bucks on this one. So that kicked me on 219. So let's take a look at the chart and let's see what the next one will be. All right, here we are on 219. As you can see, this RSI 2 did not drop below that 10 until 3.3. And right here on 3.3, it did drop below it. It's at 9.23. So I'm going to show that purchase. But just as a heads up, notice that the stock did drop afterwards. So we'll see what that does to my sheet. And here we are on that sheet. For this one here, looks like I was in it for a while, right? And that's just because that price just kept on dropping. Well, so I never was able to set that stop as that price was dropping. And as you can see, eventually it did tell me that I may want to look to sell, okay? So I put that initial stop in here at 649.88. Which is below that average, okay? So this one here is looking like it's going to be a loss. The next one, it did move up, so I did go ahead and have it move that stop up just slightly. But of course, the next day on 326, it dropped on down and of course triggered that stop. And that stop hit me at 653.24. And since that is below my average of 676, that is a loss, and that was a loss of a minus $459. Now, the way the sheet is set up, I have it set at 3% right here. So if that does drop below that 3% of the MA5 value, then it's going to tell me to look to sell, okay? Now, I could change that so that it could kick me out earlier. I can change it to 2%, and you'll see these numbers right here, or this look to sell, it's actually going to trigger me earlier, okay? So if I do 2%, you can see it just moved up to this day right here on 320, right? And if I do 1%, it's going to move it up even further, right? Now, of course, lowering this could mean that you get stopped out earlier on something that might just be fluctuating just a little bit before taking off. So it is a fine line that you do have to play with. And I'm just doing 3% just for this test. But I think you have to play with the stock and find out for that particular stock what percentage below that MA5 you were willing to risk. So in this case, I did take a loss of $459. And then, of course, that did kick me on 326. And on 327, we all know that was the one we just entered in. And that one ended up making me almost $1,200. So like I said, I'm really just playing around here, trying to find a way that I can have the sheet to help me so that I don't necessarily have to watch the stock, and it can tell me what to do, and I can make those decisions and set those stops and so forth toward the end of the day, as that does help if you are working during the day. Now in this case, I'm just using SPY, as I consider SPY one of the safer ones to actually trade versus something that has higher volatility. So I just wanted to kind of show you what I've been playing around with. It's not perfect, and nothing is going to guarantee anything, right? But maybe playing around a little bit with this number here, or even having it to set a stop at a percentage below that average price just to even help reduce that extra risk. But like I said, anytime that you do that, you do take the chance of getting stopped out too early before taking off. So it is definitely a fine line. You don't want to ride it to the ground, so you want to get kicked out before that happens, but you definitely don't want to get kicked out if it's just taking a breather before taking off. But anyway, like I said, this sheet is not yet available because I am just playing around with it, but eventually I do hope to have this up and out to my Discord members with, of course, a strong warning that this does not guarantee that you will not lose money. But like I said, I'm just playing around here, but I do hope to get something like this out to my Discord members. And if you are interested in what I'm trying to do here, come on over, join the Discord. The link is in the pinned comments and down in the descriptions below. And the sheets that are available on my Discord is, of course, my high yield stock tracker sheet right here that you can see on the screen. And it does help you to track each and every one of your high yield ETFs so that you can find out what your real price per share is for each one. And as I slide over, you can see that I am still down on those 4 same ETFs. Now, ULTY, I was up like 0.5% at the end of last week, but it did come down a little bit. So now this one's down about 2%. But that's okay because a lot of the stocks have come down just a little bit, as I'm sure they're just taking a breather, and I'm hoping that they take back off. So this sheet is available to my Discord members, along with my options tracker as you're looking right here. And for this one, I am using it to track my options. And on my next video, I'll have to show where I did roll ASTS because this one is slated to expire on Friday. So I did roll ASTS down to $71 on this cash secured put and out 1 week to pick up some premium. But I'll update this on another video. But these 2 sheets are definitely available to my Discord members, but my RSI 2 tracker is not. So I just wanted to make sure I clarify that. But if you would like to get a copy of those other sheets, come on over, join the Discord, where you'll not only get those sheets, but you'll also get notified whenever I do make my trades. I do let my Discord members know when I buy shares and which options that I'm getting into. So click that link down in the descriptions and in the pinned comments below, as we would love to have you. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, legend out.